All right, welcome, guys.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Oh, good. And this was a kind of a, we saw that you guys were here. We thought we want to get some international perspectives and voices on. You took your name tags off, but someone thought of me and actually wrote your stuff down. Because we actually haven't really met yet.
Nope.
So maybe just start by saying, who you are, where you're from, and then, what brought you to the Canadian Hydrogen Convention.
Yeah, I can start. My name is Morten Stage. I'm with TotalEnergies, and I am the chairman of what we call the INEOS CCUS, which is the Danish government's mission-driven partnership for actually delivering CCS and utilization in Denmark. And in Total, I am heading up a number of engineering departments working on scouting for hydrogen, scouting for CCS projects, and electrification.
Okay. Well, if you're scouting for them, you've come to the right place.
Indeed.
All right, and my name is Soeren, Reinhold Poulsen. I work for INEOS Energy, petrochemical company, but also interested in hydrogen, of course, but running let me call it a leading CCS project in the Danish part of the North Sea.
Oh, okay.
And we're here as part of a Danish delegation that are here on behalf of the Academy for Technical Sciences and also an organization called CLEAN.
Oh.
And we are on a fully packed program here. We started Monday, and we still have a few days to go. Part of that program is obviously to go here and hear about hydrogen and see what happens in Canada.
Okay,
it's definitely on the move in Europe, especially in Denmark. But it seems like you're definitely the front runners.
Oh, so, well, that's great to hear. And I know we look at places like Norway and Denmark, and there's a handful of places that are, I think, really moving aggressively, and Denmark, I think, is right on that list. So for how you're doing carbon capture right now, is it primarily out into the ocean? Where are you doing it?
So in all honesty, we don't really do it yet. We are preparing ourselves. In 2019, we set some very ambitious targets for actually being reducing our emissions with 70% in 2030 and being 110% in 2050. So one of the ways of actually for the government to do that was put out some funds, some tenders in order to make this happen.
Yeah.
We are actually just delivering on those projects. One of the projects is the one Soeren will talk about, where they actually did a pilot, and another project is where we're working on the concept select in order to make this happen before 2030. Because the ambition for Denmark is actually to become a CO2 hub for Europe. We have plenty of the countries around us who are willing to capture CO2, but they don't have any place to store it.
Oh, okay.
And the Danish subsoil is very good sorted out for actually delivering the storage capacity. So we are endeavoring on being a CO2 storage hub for Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, I can only supplement that. We're starting offshore. We've been there for more than 3 decades, producing oil, gas, and water. And now we're taking it into a next area in terms of storing CO2 instead. And then, of course, we'll go near shore and onshore once we learn how to do it. Okay. And the scope that Morten is talking about, or the potential, is including, of course, the Danish onshore assets and also nearshore assets.
Oh, interesting.
So a perfect subsoil for our own CO2, but also for importing CO2 from other European countries that are not far developed in terms of storage or don't have access due to the wrong geology, simply.
So what does the geology like deep underground look like for you?
Well, in principle, we have the oil and gas adventure in Denmark is primarily chalk, so that's a carbonate where we have produced oil and gas for the last 50 years. And the first stepping stone for TotalEnergies in Denmark is actually trying to store CO2 in some of the fields that we have ended oil and gas production. But there is also potential in all the sandstone aquifers, a couple of kilometers down in the subsoil. But clearly, the largest potential in Denmark is offshore.
Okay. So we talk about carbon capture and storage. We also talk about carbon utilization. So is the first example of that more the utilization side, where you're putting into existing oil fields or gas fields and helping get product out, or is it just explain that part?
That's a big no.
Okay.
So in Europe, we and in particular in Denmark and for TotalEnergies, I don't want to talk for INEOS Energy, but EOR is not a process that we will engage into. The CO2 is pure for sequestration.
Yep.
And we hope that we can also then, of course, turn CO2 into other products like building materials or storing it in other biological processes like seaweed, all kinds of utilization products. But for CO2 EOR, it's a no-go.
Okay, that's good to hear. So that was really some of our earliest work, was to figure out how to do this, but really the massive scale projects that we're doing here are all net zero, and so it's true sequestration that we're working on as well. So when you look at projects that are happening here, I don't know how much time you've had to look at things maybe like Shell Quest or Polaris, or what Air Products is proposing, or sorry, in the process of building. Like how much of the region have you had a chance to look at or talk to people here?
So we spent the first 2 days, i.e. Monday and Tuesday, in Vancouver. Okay. So we visited a company called Carbon Energy and Engineering, and that's a DAC, direct air capture of CO2.
Oh, yeah.
And then also a capture company called Svante, who's also capturing from point sources and so on. And then we had a chance to visit the British Columbia University as well. Had a very good half day there and learning about what they've done on a lower technical readiness level, but still very important. And the crew that is here on behalf of the ATV and also Clean, it's a mix of industry players, academia, and other organizations. So it fits perfectly to what we want to gain out of this trip here.
Oh, nice.
And tomorrow, so the next couple of days, we're going to spend here around Edmonton, and we're going to visit the trunk line and see other interesting projects tomorrow. So I believe tomorrow is going to be a big bus trip around Edmonton and see all the exciting projects that you have, and actually get out. And we spent a lot of time looking at PowerPoint presentations and seeing very, very interesting projects, but now we're going to see steel and concrete and see things already in operations. And I think that's very important for us as well.
Well, and I think most people who haven't been here before are kind of floored by just the scale of what's happening and how big this region is. So it really is a pretty massive space. And we've been doing carbon capture for decades. We've got several projects that are capturing more than 1 million tons a year, have been doing it for about a decade. So are there out of that trip that you're going to do, are there any that you're particularly curious about? Like are you going to the Sturgeon refinery, or are you doing Shell, or like what kinds of projects are you going to visit?
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in the pipelines at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Because of course, when you're saying pipelines, it sounds pretty simple, but one of the conundrums we have in Denmark is actually the fact, how do you ensure that the infrastructure, which we don't have in place now for the transport, how do we ensure that is actually have a size that is large enough for the future? Right now, we have a potential risk of we have small projects with small dedicated pipelines from one place to another. We would like to have large-scale pipelines up front. And I know you've been successful in that, so that's one of the things I'm very interested in. Also because that we envision that on the longer term, we could foresee that there will be pipelines going from Germany to Denmark.
Oh, wow. Well, I think most people just think, they look at the plumbing in their home and say, okay, that's what a pipe looks like. It's how I get the water out of my sink, or the natural gas line that's coming into their furnace. Those lines, natural gas lines, don't really work when you do hydrogen, especially at a big scale. You can probably do a 5 or 20% blend into your home, but if you're going to do a massive scale project where you're moving, millions of cubic meters of hydrogen, those pipes aren't going to work. Partly because the molecules is so small, it'll seep out, corrode the pipe, cause all kinds of issues. So you can't use the existing infrastructure without doing some pretty massive modifications. So are you going to CFAR Technologies?
Yes, we're doing that Friday,
okay.
And I think I'll just comment a little bit on the pipeline, and then I think we should allow Soeren to talk about his very fascinating pilot project that just ended. But on the pipelines, I mean, we are actually trying to see that there's some existing pipelines going from the onshore Denmark to offshore. And the Ørsted, who is the owner of that particular pipeline, is now currently investigating whether there is any means to actually reuse that. Because that will, of course, reduce the carbon footprint of not producing another one and drive down the cost. But of course, it is also a technological step forward if that should be possible in the future.
Yeah, and again, we've got projects on the go here with C4 Technologies to figure that out. It's a multinational approach to do testing. Again, people probably would be surprised because it's a brand new technology, brand new industry, but there isn't a global standard on what a pipeline is for hydrogen. So it's trying to discover this, to innovate around it. And a lot of that work is happening here. We've got partners all over the world who are part of this research project to do stress testing and usage testing. So I think you'll love the visit over there, and it's a great group of people.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
I'm also sure I will love it, because what you need beyond the PowerPoint and the lab experience and all the modeling and so on, what you need to do, of course, you need to go out and see the kit. How big is it? And by that you get a very good impression of what is the investment we're talking about. So that's super important. And for Greensand, the project that we are running, then we just completed a very important pilot project where we took CO2 from Belgium, Antwerp, and transported it to Denmark and stored it underground offshore. So that was a big celebration, but now we need to roll out the sleeves and start building the stuff. And the only way you get a good feeling for how to do that is, of course, to talk to other people. And this is rather characteristic for this new setup. Hydrogen, all the green tech, people are talking together compared to the old traditional oil and gas business where we were strictly competitors. Now we realize, because we have the climate goals we want to reach together, we need to accelerate, and we do that through collaboration. And that's what I see when I speak to all the participants in the various value chains, being it hydrogen, being it CCS, CCUS, and so on.
Yeah, it's been one of the themes of this show is that conversation about it's a global race, but it's not a global race where you need one winner. It's a global race where everybody has to get across that finish line as fast as they can, but as together as they can. And it's the more we can act as a collective, the more we can de-risk things, the more we can prove out technologies, we can help iterate across other countries faster. So, doing pilot projects in Denmark help projects here. Doing projects here help projects in Germany. It is this interconnected web.
Indeed.
Okay. So, you're here for 10 days, did you say?
5 days in total.
5 days in total, okay. Were you able to watch the hockey game last night? To shift gears to talk a little bit.
We were on a plane.
Oh, okay.
From Vancouver, but I understand there was big celebrations downtown Edmonton. Yeah, I do believe that even though I shouldn't probably not say it, but our audience this morning, some of them did actually look like they had a good celebration yesterday.
Yes, there was many people whose morning started off a little slow. We had probably 20,000 people in the arena. Another 10,000 or so around the arena doing watch parties. We hosted a street party here last night where we had a good 3,000 plus people. Plus there's all the restaurants and pubs and bars. So there was probably a good 40 or 50,000 people celebrating on the streets last night. So I was going to ask you, what's your first impressions of the Edmonton region, assuming you'd had this massive outdoor experience?
Unfortunately not, but we would have loved it. And we were actually sort of motivated to go down there, but we were at the hotel at 1 o'clock in the morning, so I think it was a little too late for us.
Well, there were judging just by what I could hear out my window, there were still certainly people out in the streets at 1:30. Okay, so we've talked about what you're going to see around the region. We've talked about your projects and some things you're working on. Are there other people here or things that you're really looking to connect with, people who you want to speak to that are at the show?
Well, I would say even though we not at this moment deal with the hydrogen in our company, we know we will expand because it's all integrated, so at some point we'll also look into it. And we do also in our network, we have people that deals with hydrogen, so us coming here and take that knowledge back and talking to it, I think that will also improve the collaboration between our two countries.
Yeah.
So that's also a key purpose.
Yeah, and I just want to add on that I think for all the energy majors, I think we are all trying to see what is the right course on the hydrogen. So we are developing it on small steps and paths but we don't really know what's the right strategy. So coming to a place like this with a lot of clever people with new technologies is just an inspiration to figure out what is the way we actually want to go.
Yeah, okay, so great. Again, thanks so much for being here. It's been really wonderful to meet you. I'm going to actually look up a bit more of what you're up to just to see what other connections maybe we can make for you. How big is the group that you brought here this year?
We are 24 with one of the half of the delegation that was in Vancouver, but in total we are 48.
Wow.
And there is a booth down there which is called CO2 Vision, which is a lighthouse in Denmark in the northern parts of Jutland, where they are focusing solely on actually establishing CCUS, and it's also very related to biogas. So I would also encourage other people to go down there and talk to them.
Okay, fantastic. Again, thanks. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to say thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Again, thanks so much for being here. Again, this was a conversation with a couple of leaders in industry from Denmark who are here visiting the Canadian Hydrogen Convention inside the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub Pavilion and the Edmonton Global Stage.